Welcome to today's episode of Flowmeter Guy, where the currents of wit and wisdom flow as smoothly as the meters we discuss and the people who use them. Joining me today in our Atlanta studio is our guest who traveled all the way from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, just to have a conversation with us. So, young man, what's your name and what do you do?
Well, my name is Pete Barna, and I sell flow meters.
That's his ticket to get in the club here. So there you go. Pete sells flow meters, and he's all the way down from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So what kind of activities or hobbies do you have in Pennsylvania?
Well, I like to ride motorcycles, and I'm into yoga, so I do that too.
Motorcycles and yoga,
Yeah.
hand in hand.
Yeah,
You get off the
absolutely.
bike, you can put your back together to get back on the bike again, huh?
I have two small kids. They keep me busy.
Do you?
Yeah. So
And the rumor is you actually have some experience being in front of the camera.
yes, yeah. So we did this movie called The Unsung, and I had
The unsung.
The Unsung, and it's about a kid that's into superheroes, and he ends up on the street when he's older, and he becomes like a vigilante, and he ends up solving a murder mystery, right? So he gets involved in a homeless community, and there's a girl in that homeless community, and she's part of this whole thing, and it's a really cool movie. But I was the abusive father that I got snubbed early on in the movie.
No, it's my house! No! He's not here! No, here's my son! You're drunk! I'm not drunk! Yes, you are! Stop it!
And I did some stunt riding for him on the motorcycle, which was kind of fun.
Wow.
So there's a couple motorcycle scenes. It's actually me on the motorcycle, not him.
So you're the stunt guy then?
Yeah, I was a stunt guy for that, which was really fun.
Yeah.
We laughed the whole time. It was just such a great project. And then recently we did it's a wrestling spoof of the old studio wrestling from the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I got to be one of the wrestlers, so that was a lot of fun.
WLTV contract. Even though the event itself was subpar, it gave birth to one of the greatest rivalries the sport has ever seen.
The champions look to close this one out in style as Star heads to the top rope. Oh no! Star lands on his teammate. Maverick is out cold and the Savages coming for the pin. 1, 2, 3! The Savages are the new tag team champions. I don't believe it.
A lot of wrestling, huh? So talk about a diversified, that falls under the category of working well with difficult customers. And you do wrestling, and you can
Yoga,
motorcycles, fall down some stairs, and do all kinds of stunts there.
Yeah.
So you are a well-rounded individual. So this is why he works for the company. That's part of the skills requirement, and it takes to sell flow meters. Well then, Pete, can you give us a little history on how you started out? Say, bring us back to the beginning and share with us your journey on building your successful career in the flow metering business.
Absolutely. So I went to a local school in Pittsburgh called Point Park. And at the time, I wanted to be a draftsman. I wanted to get into computer-aided drafting.
Yeah.
But that kind of changed. So I was looking at what they offered at the college, and they had a concentration in process control that I thought looked interesting. So I took that.
A class and process control, really. That's kind of unique.
They were one of the few, and then I did a minor in electronics. So I graduated in '94 from Point Park with a degree in electrical engineering technology with a concentration in process control. So at the time, I took a job that I was working prior to college. They hired me as a manager fixing photocopiers.
Photocopiers.
So yeah, they made me a manager, and I was still there. And maybe 2 years into that, which was probably my 10th year with that company, my former employer found me and hired me. And I started off there in '97, and was sales engineer for quite some time, moved into operations for a couple years, took on the responsibility of IT. I redid all their servers and all their computers, updated the website, and then moved into a general manager position in 2009. And I was with that company until 2022. And I started with a new company here in 2024. So I took on the responsibility of opening a subsidiary office for a Swedish company in the United States. So that's very exciting for me to
So that's your
take on this.
your current adventure.
Yes.
And so the company now, the Swedish company, is process control instrumentation. What kind of products do they have then?
They do primarily flow instruments using the DP technology, which is differential pressure.
Right.
So they've been in business since 1947. So they make some very high quality, very robust, very durable differential pressure flow meters.
So differential pressure is been around for a very long time. So it's an earlier technology, and then I assume everything is caught up with the technologies we were talking earlier. So in addition to pressure, you're going to have electronic or analog outputs or other types of
Absolutely.
communications as well.
Yeah, there's still a place for the older technologies, which is strictly mechanical, where we have a very reliable, heavy-duty measuring cell and some high current capacity, high voltage switches that people still use today. But we do have some new pressure sensing technology that lets us utilize higher accuracies, some output signals, some protocol communications, higher range capability. So we are definitely moving into that direction with some of our newer products.
And the name of the company again? For
It's Eletta. Eletta Flow, yes.
So did you ever have one of those customers that were difficult, and then you came in and swooped down and solved the big project, big solution?
All the time, yeah. Those would come across my desk quite often.
So there you go. So the flow meter biz, no matter shape or size or old or new, it's all the same. It's nothing
All the
new.
same, yeah.
So of those kind of things that you sold, why don't you tell me maybe the most popular applications that you'd run across? What kind of things would you say?
Well, it's interesting. For me, I really liked working with the OEMs, right? Because that's something, they need something very specific, and they need something in high quantity. So obviously, the turnover was really good with those customers. And I like being the point of contact in case they had any issues or if they wanted to move into a different aspect of what their application might be.
So with that in mind, we've come past some turbulent times. How did you adjust your business plan? A few years back, we had a phenomena called COVID. Kind of hit everybody right between the eyes there. So how did that affect your business at the time?
Well, we did what pretty much most businesses did at that point in time, is take advantage of what you do well. And for us, it was supporting the customers, right? It's making sure you were there to accommodate what they needed. Obviously there was supply chain issues that we had to deal with, but luckily, having secondary suppliers helped out at the time, and we were able to keep moving and fulfill a lot of the business, whereas some of the other companies could not.
Well, that's unique because a lot of people are gone.
Yeah.
They couldn't do that anymore.
Exactly.
And I remember sitting with me and an engineer in a 10,000 square foot building for 2 years with not a lot of people, everybody working remote.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody was under the understanding of, what everybody was dealing with at the time, right? So people were holding back, weren't spending as much. So you had to be careful with, your expenses and what you were doing, but still at the same time, stay on top of your orders and stay on top of your suppliers and just make sure you're giving your customers accurate information on what's going on. Because that was the most important thing. Because if you have, especially with the OEMs, when they have deadlines and, and what we would do is we'd say, listen, we need you to place your blanket orders a year early because of this, because we want to make sure we at least have it in the pipeline because, supplies are running out on certain things.
That's right. Supplies are running out, and you don't know when it's going to kick in. In fact, that was the biggest surprise. We had no idea what deliveries were going to be.
Yeah.
So did you learn anything from that? Is your business practices any different now because of that phenomena?
Well, Eletta, they have also sub-suppliers, right? So they source a lot of their product locally in Sweden, but they have other sub-suppliers that they get their products from. So they're definitely ready for something like that if it were to happen again. It's good to have sub-suppliers anyways for other reasons in general. So, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Well, hopefully we'll never have
hopefully not.
A phenomena like that once again there. It's changed this dynamically. I remember walking around, as I said, why do I have such a big empty building? And I think my practices in business have become more conservative. We're probably running a leaner machine
Yeah, absolutely.
than we ever have before. Just we learned some lessons there in that picture there. So in your business there, as far as training, what's the best way for you to educate your customer clientele?
Well, of course, since COVID, a lot of Teams meetings, but people are getting burned out on that. So you got to be careful. You got to use quality versus quantity, right? So if you're going to do a Teams meeting, I try to keep it between 30 and 45 minutes, and I try to make sure that I focus on what we need to discuss. But I leave time for the conversation to go in the direction that the customer might want it to go, because they may have some specific questions, or there may be something that you branch off and you want to discuss in a little bit more detail. So I try to make sure I touch on the subject at hand, do it in detail, and then leave time for anything that they want to discuss. So I do that. Customer visits are still part of the equation, but it has to make sense with travel being so expensive. So we got to make sure that if we're going out visiting a customer, we try to string 2 or 3 visits together, or if it's with an OEM, make sure that it makes sense. To go out and do what you got to do.
Yeah, no, I think the market methodology has changed dynamically. Before it was all knocking on the door, then we went all online.
Yep.
And there was nothing more annoying to me as speaking at an engineering conference in front of 200 people, and everybody was on mute. And I would do one of my old man jokes, and you just hear cricket, cricket, cricket.
Like
you
two
didn't know
people laugh.
you didn't know if you were bombing because they got no feedback from that. So I think the first thing that happened, the first trip that I could travel after COVID, I went to an engineering conference, and I was so excited when I got off the airplane and rented a car. I forgot to pick up my luggage, and I had to go. I had to go and stand behind a podium and hug somebody because I hadn't done that for 2 years. So it really made a dynamic difference there in my communications with people.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed in a lot of the things that we were talking about earlier today, in addition to your communication skills, I noticed you're spending a lot more time on graphics and art and how to do things there. So I think PowerPoint presentations have changed dynamically through this whole thing. So it's a great, instead of just having a picture and talking about it, the document itself is much more informative, and I've noticed that a lot of that's on your website as well. And in addition to that, I noticed as far as the complexity of some of the products that you're selling, you're having more matrices on the website to build the part number, to design what you want. So with that in mind, and building a part number, first of all, we need to know the basics of parameters to select product. Why don't you give me a quick rundown of the typical parameters that you need to specify one of your pieces of equipment?
Sure. It's pretty typical when you're specifying flow instruments. You want to, when you're talking with the customer, if they don't have a meter presently, right? So if they're not replacing something they currently have, you have to make sure you ask them, okay, what's the pipe size? Obviously, what are you measuring? Is it liquid? Is it gas? Is it water? Is it oil? What is it? And then you have to determine the nominal and the maximum parameters. Okay, where are you flowing normally? Also, what do we need to accommodate in a worst case scenario? So that's going to be for flow, but that's also going to be for the operating conditions, for the pressure, for the temperature. So we want to make sure that everything is suited. For our meters, do you have straight piping available? Because we want to have a nice laminar flow coming into the orifice. Is it mounted inside? Is it mounted outside? What sort of ingress protection do you need? Is this going to be subject to wash down? Do we want to make sure water doesn't get inside the housing?
No.
Is there a possibility that the liquid could freeze in the pipe? So there's a lot of things you need to ask the customer. Is it a general purpose application, or do you need classified ratings, for explosion-proof areas? So these are the type of things you need to ask. Also, I like to ask them, what do you prefer on wetted materials? So a lot of companies, even if it's just water, maybe they'll prefer stainless over brass. So you ask them that. You ask them what their budget is. How many pieces are you looking to purchase? Flow direction. And those are the type of things that if I get those answers, I could usually quote pretty accurately.
And quote accurately, and then you get the next customer who says, I have less than desirable straight run of pipe. What's the effect? And these are things that they're not really written in the manual. What happens when I don't have any straight run of pipe, or I don't have these parameters to your application?
With this flow meter, for optimum use, we require the straight pipes, but they will work with less straight piping. For me, with the differential pressure, I usually say use the 2/3, 1/3 rule. So 2/3 in, 1/3 out. Okay, and then if you don't have that, start sacrificing a little bit on the outlet and then go to the inlet, because it's more important for that laminar flow when it hits that orifice,
Yes.
and then when it's coming back out. Now, when we talk straight piping, we're talking obviously straight piping, but no change in diameter, so it has to be the same diameter of the pipe. So if it's a 2-inch flow meter, you can't have a 1-inch straight pipe coming into a 2-inch meter back to a 1-inch. So it has to be uniform of the same pipe ID as the flow body. And then, if you have a valve or an elbow, I mean, that's drastic. So that can create the turbulence or the back cavitation that could cause the meter to maybe not operate the way it should.
And then I think the best solution, my text today, is we talk to people on the phone until we're blue in the face about supporting something, and we say, can you take a picture with your iPhone? And which seems to answer a lot of the questions that weren't part of the discussion.
Yeah.
There's an elbow there, there's a T there, there's a butterfly valve right there, or something like that.
Well, these days, you get a lot of inquiries coming from people that aren't technicals, right?
Yeah.
And that's frustrating to a point, getting the information.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I had one lady send me over an order for a meter for a 3-inch pipe, but then she wanted 160 liters a minute through it. I'm like, that doesn't work. Are you sure it's a 3-inch pipe? And then, so I don't know where the part number came from and the associated range, but we had to go back, and they did send me a picture. I'm like, that looks like 1.5-inch pipe.
Yeah.
Let's double check and make sure. And we ended up ironing it out, and it was a bigger pipe. So
Yeah, nothing worse when you get a phone call that says it doesn't fit.
yeah,
Then you have to go backwards to figure out what's going on.
right. Mm-hmm.
So in what you're doing right now, why don't you give us maybe 3 of your typical applications that you're going to use your technology in?
Well, we're internationally known for providing solutions in the cooling water and lubrication systems.
Cooling and
primarily, yeah.
Okay.
So we sell a lot into the hydro plants, cement factories and their lubrication circuits for their crushers, steel mills and their lubrication cooling circuits. We sell a lot into nuclear power, so we are able to design our products to accommodate radioactive environments, where we use ceramic blocks and we use certain type of elastomers that are suitable for radioactive environment. And pretty much anywhere where there's flow, we can fit a DP meter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen your technology all over the place for different applications. With that in mind, what kind of emerging technologies in process control instrumentation market do you believe are going to be game changers coming towards the future? What are we looking for? Where are we going? Is there more in the communication side? Is the device going to have more rangeability?
Yeah, so for us, we have a new product that utilizes the differential pressure, but it uses 2 absolute pressure sensors. It's electronic. It's not strictly mechanical like some of our classic products, which still has its advantage. But with the absolute pressure and the electronic, we now integrate a temperature sensor. We can get higher accuracy. We can get a bigger turn down ratio, which is the actual range of the meter. And we have communication protocols built in. So we have Modbus as standard with this, but we can provide a communicator or some sort of gateway to translate that if you need a different sort of protocol. But this sensor also, we can measure steam, we can measure gas flow.
Steam, gas
flow.
Now, you mentioned the type of gas. These are more inert gases, nothing explosion-proof?
Nothing explosion-proof. No, not at this point. So I would do strictly general-purpose stuff.
You got to learn the limitations. Each device has a change. And as far as the communication, I thought it kind of odd that Modbus was very popular 30 years ago and then kind of went away. And then Modbus just made a comeback,
Yes.
and everybody asked for Modbus for everything right now. And I don't know why. I guess they finally figured out how to utilize it.
Yeah, gateways are cheap though. We can translate that Modbus into pretty much anything. So
that's the biggest issue that I have when somebody talks to me. They said, I'd like to read this on my computer, or I'd like to read this on the cloud and Wi-Fi and things like that. So the technology is not as fast as your iPhone.
Yeah.
Like I told you earlier, I went to a trade show and we had an app on the phone that you could calibrate your flow meter with. And I was at a trade show and there was a pipe, and a young person walked up with his iPhone and pointed it towards the pipe and said, I can't read flow. And we said, no, you need to have a sensor on the device. But they didn't understand that. And so the marketplace is ahead of the actual technology at this point in time.
Yeah.
So everything eventually is going to talk
absolutely
wireless or cellular or something at some point in time. So it's just a matter of practicality. The biggest problem we also had with some of the communications was security. Security's become a big issue inside of facilities where they don't want you to go onto their network. You have to go around their network. So there's some issues from time to time with that regard there. Well, as far as your overall training in the field there, you have gone many different lengths there. As you said, you learned the technology, you trained the people, you did some sales engineering, you did some managing. You also mentioned you did some IT work. Where did that work?
When I first started years ago, my former company, they asked me to take over that responsibility. At the time, I didn't have much experience with it, but I was interested in it. So I went to school at night for a couple of years. I got my MCSE, and I
busy guy.
Took over the responsibility. I converted their system from Novell over to Windows 4.0 at the time. Updated all the servers, and at the time, every computer in the place was hand built, and some printer drivers would work on one, some of the ERP system would work on the other, and there was always issues. So I basically upgraded the servers to 4.0, and then I went to a local computer company, and I had them build me like 20 identical computers, just to make my life easy. And from then on, everything worked the same, and it was really easy.
Everything worked the same.
Everything worked the way it's supposed to, and I didn't have a headache. I could
right.
And everything was working. So
that's the opposite from the IT word, isn't it?
I remember we would reboot our servers, and we would cross our fingers that they wouldn't hang up. But yeah, it was great. So, and then once I got into management, I delegated that to another one of our employees who's really good at it, right? And we worked together. So he consulted with me with some of the other things that we did. And we did have an outside company as well for some of the heavier stuff. So if we needed to upgrade our servers and stuff, we'd bring in a third party to do it. But it was nice. It was a good experience.
Did you get involved then on the web development side too as well?
Yes, I did. At the time, the website was in need of a reboot, so we definitely upgraded that twice. We did it once, and then we did it again. We wanted a backbone that was more friendly to e-commerce and more friendly for us to update. Right. So
I think is the business model we talked about is the type of technologies that we have there. They're engineered products that are designed for specific applications. And there's some click and buy stuff, but a lot of the stuff that's in the process control instrumentation, unless you're buying a specific widget that just does that, there's different features, and it's more information collection as opposed to actually click and buying it on the internet there. And that's the value that you're offering is here's the technology, and now here's the guy behind the technologies. We're going to tell you how it works. And then we're going to, after the sale, tell you how to support it and any other benefits with that.
Well, the thing of it too is, selling this stuff for so long, you know what the best option is for the customers. So, but you have to weigh their budget. You have to weigh their delivery needs. If they need something off the shelf, what are they willing to sacrifice to get what they want? Ultimately, I know what the best choice is for them based off of what they're looking to do. Right. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And that comes with experience, right? So I know how all the different flow technologies work. I know all the companies. So when someone comes to me with an application, I can say, okay, this is probably suited for a Coriolis meter because of this, or you need a positive displacement meter because of this, or our DP meter is the best choice because of this, right? So that's the value I think I have from just being in the business for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
So they value your experience. So based upon that, what can you want to share with us? Tell us some of your worst applications and maybe one of your best applications. Did you get in trouble?
Well, let me tell you one story. So we had an inquiry, believe it or not, it was an online inquiry for a Coriolis meter. And it was for like a 4-inch line. So it was
a big, fancy, expensive meter.
It was like a $25,000 flow meter, right? So, and I remember one of my head engineers came up to me and goes, Pete, I don't know if this is real. I said, and it was for airflow, right? So our Coriolis meters at the time, we had an advantage. We had thicker tubes than the competition, so we could handle really high pressures. But to run air through those meters, you need some pressure behind it to actually move the tubes, right? So we sent it over to the factory, and they considered it, and then we quoted it, and we got the order. Like, oh man, okay. So quite
a salesman there.
So we sent the meter down. It was a company in Oklahoma, and I believe it was for a skid for NASA at the time.
Oh.
Right? So we sent it down to them, and we couldn't get the thing to work. I'm like, what is going on? Why isn't it working? And we had some of the top guys in the world that understand Coriolis technology, and just couldn't figure it out. And everything looked right. And, it just wouldn't work. So this was one of the few times I was going to make an on-site visit. Right. So I was going to go down and visit this customer and make sure everything was set up in the program, because it wasn't real complicated to set up the parameters on the display. There were some certain things, but nothing crazy. I mean, it should have been straightforward. So I told my wife, I said, hey, listen, I got to go out of town. So I'll be gone for a day. I'll have to leave at night. And she goes, when are you leaving? I said, I'm going Friday. And she's like, oh no, are you sure you have to go? I'm like, yeah, I got to go. But don't worry, I'll be back like really late at night. And here she had my 50th birthday surprise party planned for me. And it was the one time that I had to leave. Like, I never left to do that.
Yeah.
I had, so she had to like scramble, and like, she didn't know, she had like, over the top, like mice over the top with everything. So this was an over the top party. And, she had told me that we were going to do something for my birthday on Saturday. She's just go out with your friends Friday, have fun. Meanwhile, my friends were all in on, they were going to kind of get me to the spot where the party was. So I told her, so she had to ultimately tell me about the party, and it killed her to do it. So I basically told the guys I couldn't make it. I said, I have a personal thing that came up, right? And in hindsight, if I went there, I wouldn't have been able to fix it anyways. We ended up selling them a vortex meter instead.
Oh.
And it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And then they bought another one, right? So there was just something with that meter.
The application parameters were just...
It just didn't lend itself to that size Coriolis.
Yeah. Welcome to the world of process controls. You sell 10 of them, and then the one out of the 10, there'll be something unique. And it's never the equipment. There's always some quirk to the application that we really weren't aware about. So we kind of circle around. We talked about a lot of different things, and we do have some wrap-up questions there. So one of the questions that I always like to ask is, if you could go back in time to visit your former self when you started in the business world there, what kind of advice would you give to yourself now for all the things that you've experienced?
Well, I don't know if this crosses over into personal. I probably would have done a little bit more investing. Back at the time, I was a single guy, did a good job.
Yeah.
I just didn't really plan on having kids and getting married. That happens, so I could have set myself up a little bit better for that. But from a professional standpoint, I'm really happy with my course up until this point. Had a great experience working my former job and working with this job. Met great people. Still correspond with these great people. I have some really good friends I met in the industry. I love what I do. I really wouldn't change too much.
I can sense from our conversations, the one thing you've done repetitively is you educated yourself on certain technologies, from school to product to IT and all these different things there. So most people never read the manual.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've read the manual, and it certainly complements in the way you conduct yourself with your business and the way you conduct yourself with your customers or clientele.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. So what's in the future for Pete?
Well, it's expanding and growing this North American subsidiary of the company.
Yeah.
So I'm learning a little bit more about the marketing aspect of it. So I enjoy that a lot. And it's reconnecting with some of my old colleagues that are friends, and getting out there and spreading the word. I really believe in this product, in this company. It's highest quality product on the market. And there's a lot of business to be had here in North America. So it's next 20 years of my life or so, or however long, I'm going to be doing my best to grow this subsidiary.
Yes, that sounds like you're going to be a winner, and a plus for your new employer. And so thank you for coming all the way down to Atlanta.
Oh,
it was a long walk. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I understand you're also in town for another big meeting with another organization to network with your peers there. So it's a game of networking, like you said.
Yes.
Your biggest advantage in the marketplace is you know everybody in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And so congratulations, and thank you very much for seeing us today.
Good to see you, Brent.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into another exciting episode of Flow Meter Guy. Want to catch more episodes? Just follow the playlist link right over here. Remember, we need people like you to make this channel a success. If you've got a story to share or have a recommendation for a future episode, drop us a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Well then, until next time.